Hello, and I'd like to welcome you back to the D.FINED Engagement BookCast. My name is D.FINED. I'm happy to have you here today. Today we're going to be speaking again to Laura Sukorokoff. She wrote the book, It's Not Them, It's You, Why Employees, quote, break up with their managers and what to do about it. Today's episode is going to be a discussion about a woman named Emily, and we're going to learn about empathy from Laura. Laura, thank you again for coming back and seeing me and being on the D.FINED Engagement BookCast. Hello, my friends.
Hello.
Hi, Laura.
Hello. How are you, Doug?
Sukorokoff. I'm good today. Yeah.
Good.
We had a great conversation the last time we met, and I'm thrilled to be back with you. Laura, it might be best if you hold up your book, okay?
Sure. There it is.
It's not them, it's you. What's the subtitle?
The subtitle is Why Employees Break Up with Their Managers and What to Do About It.
Okay, yeah. Employees leave, there's turnover, and there's a lot of unnecessary turnover in our companies because of poor leadership, poor management. And that's one thing that I love about your book. Just up front, it's not them, dude, it's you.
Yeah.
And well, you're just being straightforward that people sometimes, I think leaders, here's my dream. You want to hear my dream?
I'd love to hear your dream. Absolutely.
I think there ought to be a bad manager boot camp. And I think that bad managers should be sent there if they want to remain in management. Mm-hmm. They need to be sent there to bad manager boot camp and be broken down as people. I mean, I don't know how you do it, but you have to bring a lot of humility to them. You have to humiliate them and let them know that they're not all that. And in fact, their companies think they failed. So if you want to remain a manager, you got to understand that you're not good. And then you can they have to recognize that they are in need of a new way of viewing work and being a leader. And then you can build them back up to be, that's kind of the military. That's a military.
You're a military guy. I know that. I've never been in the military, and not going to lie.
They have to be broken down, because how else do you necessarily change? Because managers are famous for thinking they're better than they are.
Well, I'm going to stick up for managers a little bit
Fire away
on this one, and I'll tell you why. Mm-hmm. Because we have a business way of being that has been with us for literally hundreds of years. And, those people who study business, read business books, et cetera, they'll know the term command and control.
Absolutely.
And that's the kind of business environment most of us have grown up in.
You bet.
So with regard to the managers, there are a couple of things. Firstly, they're never really given proper management training. I shouldn't say never. That's unfair. I'm sure there are some companies out there that do include this. But most companies do no manager training whatsoever. They simply take people who are really good at tasks that they do, and they promote them into a management role.
Yes.
And then tell them just to sink or swim in that role, right? What is the term? You might know the term. It's basically where you promote them to their point of lowest competency.
Yeah, what is it? Not Murphy's Law, but the Peter Principle.
The Peter Principle. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, that's exactly it. Yes. So you're taking somebody who's really good at what they do, and you're promoting them into a role where they know nothing. And so the Peter Principle says that they're at their lowest point of competency there. Yes. So I believe, we do need to have training that supports these people. I was listening to somebody just recently who used to be a senior VP at Boeing, and she was saying how their manager training there, they had a week-long manager training. And during this time period, they were taught everything about reporting, about HR, about, all kinds of things, but they weren't taught how to work with their reports.
Right.
They weren't taught how to have conversations with their reports. And when you and I last talked, we talked about developing relationships and how these relationships really do grow out of one-on-one conversations. For me, that is the bedrock of management.
Well, you know, I honestly, I'm so glad you're the kind of person that could push back, because I kind of was being, I was trying to be provocative, but I get it. Yeah, if leaders and managers are not prepared by something, is it education, is it training, is it orientation about how if they come to a company and they're going to be a manager or they're promoted into management, they have to be given the tools and the knowledge and to be a decent manager. But that is woefully lacking in most companies. I mean, I have friends that they're consultants and contractors for companies, and even some companies like Amazon, some companies like Sam's Club. I know for a fact that Costco, there's no systematic leadership management development in those companies that are huge, and they have a lot of customers and they have a lot of employees. But it's frustrating to me. Like, it's not that hard to know that you got to prepare your managers for the job. So yeah, I would just take the really, really bad ones and send them into boot camp.
Yeah. So I said I was going to push back, but I did say I'm going to push back a little, because I think there's some merit to that. I think there's some merit to taking those people, those managers that are losing. You can tell. A quick chat with HR about what's happening with regard to employee turnover will tell you that there are some managers that are hemorrhaging people. I had a conversation with a recruiter once, somebody I know from a company that I know well. And I asked her about a position at that company because I knew somebody I thought would be a good candidate. So in essence, what I was going to do was say, hey, talk to this person. I think they'd be great for your company. Right. The recruiter said to me, is this a friend of yours? And I said, yes. And she said, then don't refer her to this role.
Wave her off.
The hiring manager, her people never stay longer than 6 months. And I thought, isn't that interesting, right? The recruiter is telling me don't do it. And that's so that kind of manager, for sure. Why is that person's boss not saying, hey, what's going on, right? It is not them. It's not all these poor candidates. It's not all the workers. It's you. What's happening with you? So, and the other thing is these managers deserve to have that attention. Really, their manager should be having that one-on-one conversation to try to see what's going on.
Thank you.
To help, to support. So we talked about this the last time you and I chatted about the power of the one-on-one conversation. It's not necessarily all lovey and dovey and feel good. It can get into some hard-hitting issues, and it's real. I love that. Thank you. It is real. And so if you want to have a real productive relationship with those people who report to you, then you need to be brave enough to have those conversations. You need to make yourself emotionally available enough to develop a relationship with your people. That pays off. This isn't about you being their best friend and, going for Sunday dinner at their place with their family every weekend. It's not about that. It is about getting to know them. It's about getting to understand them. And from that point, knowing how to motivate them and how to best support them.
Yeah, I used to do a curriculum. It was called Humans at Work. Really good curriculum for leadership development. But you basically start off saying business and being a good leader is all about relationships, not just your subordinates or your team, but your peers. It's all about relationships. So we darn well need to be better at it. So we're going to talk about like the second trait, leadership trait, And our story this time centers around Emily, a woman named Emily. And what do you want to say about Emily? What happened to her?
So Emily came into a company, and last time we chatted about how people are they're most engaged in a company when they first start, and Emily was definitely no exception. She really did pour herself into her work. She did some fantastic work for this company. She was hired to help them get their customer satisfaction scores up. And anybody who works in that area, and anybody who coaches and trains and deals with, frontline customer service staff knows how challenging that can be. And she was doing some amazing work for the company in that area. And they liked her. They thought she was great. Then she got a new boss, and this boss.
Here we go again.
Right? It happens, right? We talked about when the rug gets pulled out from under you, and you all of a sudden here you are reporting to a new boss. So she got this new boss. He was not in the office. So they had a remote working relationship. Make no mistake, it was right now in this pandemic environment, a great many of us are working remotely from our team members, right? And it's more challenging for us to make these connections, but still there are a great many managers who are maintaining connections with their team members quite successfully. And this was long pre-COVID. This guy did have a remote working relationship, but everything was going fine. And so it was okay. Then Emily had an accident which injured her. Followed closely by another accident, which aggravated the original injuries and added more injuries to her. So in other words, she was physically in a lot of pain. And anybody who has been in pain over a long period of time knows how that can really wear on you physically, mentally, emotionally. And she was finding it very challenging to sit at a desk. She had soft tissue damage, so there was nothing externally to see how hurt she was. Yet she was working with lawyers, with insurance companies, so there was evidence that she, and of course medical doctors and practitioners, so there was evidence that of her injury, that she was really hurt. So she was physically hurt by those things, but the real hurt came in when her manager didn't believe her about the extent of her injuries. He didn't come right out and say, "I don't believe you." It was the way he treated her. It was when she would say, "I'm sorry, I can't come into the office for the meeting. I can't sit that long." And he would be like, his responses to her belittled her or made her feel like she wasn't a team player. That trickled down to the rest of the team, who started to ostracize her and who would make comments in team meetings about how, "Oh, you won't be able to handle that. We'll take it over." So even though she was quite capable of working from home through her injuries and contributing at least sort of 3/4 of what she did before, she was made to feel like she was basically a burden to them or really not necessary anymore. So that was bad enough in and of itself. And then she got to the point where her doctor said, "You need to take a month off. Like, you need to take a month and just heal.
Right.
And if you do that, then you'll come back stronger and you'll be much better able to work." And, we're facing, if we draw a parallel to our current environment globally with the COVID pandemic, we're being asked to restrict our social interactions. We're being asked to stay at home and really curtail our activities with the idea that this short-term pain will lead to much longer-term gain.
Right.
But if we don't change our behavior, it's going to take us much longer to get through to the other side. So it was the same kind of logic with her. And she presented this to her boss,
Yeah.
who then took it to HR. And the company said to her, no, you don't need a month off. You need 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, HR knows best. Come on, Laura.
Well, human resources is there to help with the people resources of the organization. But really, my belief is their main function is to reduce risk to the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I find it challenging in this regard because they're coming out and saying, no, you only need 2 weeks. That could almost be seen as kind of increasing the risk to the organization. Yeah. If something were to happen, if she were to pursue this line, the company could have been in a little bit of trouble. But I'm not an HR manager, so I won't claim to know all the ins and outs of that.
The thing is that I was, I've been in HR for many years, many years. And I'm sure Emily probably brought some sort of documentation that it would be best for her, medical documentation, that would be best for her to stay away from work and be at home for a month. And yet somebody, and if they're not a doctor or they're not a practitioner, somebody thought they knew better, which just boom, makes me it blows my mind. But that being said, she didn't get support from HR. Her boss was not happy. Her coworkers were talking behind her back that she's faking and all that stuff. That's what was happening to Emily, right?
Exactly.
But what did she end up doing? What did Emily do?
Well, she got to the point where she thought she would rather quit and not have money and just take the time to heal. So she quit without a job to go to. And she eventually found a job after she healed, but she was really, I'm not going to lie, Doug, she was really hurt. So when we talk about the physical hurt, that's one thing, but the emotional and mental hurt, she was hurt. She was hurt by her boss not believing her. She was hurt by her team members thinking she was faking it. She was hurt by the company and those people who were supposed to advocate on her behalf, within the company, not standing up for her. She was mostly hurt because before that time, she thought she was a contributing and valued team member. And what she learned very quickly is that she wasn't really valued at all. That may not be the way the manager saw it, but that's the point of this whole book. I purposely wrote these stories showing the effect of manager actions on the employees. I did this so that managers could see when they behave in a certain way, this is how it's perceived. And Emily's situation was perceived as a complete and total lack of empathy on the part of her boss and her company. All she wanted was some understanding and some appreciation for who she was, the value to the organization that she had contributed up to this point, and the understanding that she would give it her best as soon as she could. But instead, what she got was, oh, okay, well, I guess you're not contributing anymore. And that really hurt her. There was no empathy. As
if work is all about the work. When it comes down to it, work is about work, but it's about people doing their best work.
Yep.
Not just working, but their best work. And you got to be a certain kind of leader to get the best from people. So shame on them, shame on the coworkers. And guess what? I think that every coworker that she had, every team member, they knew after the way Emily was treated that they doggone better not get injured or sick, because we know what will happen. Wow. That was the culture. Yes. That was the culture in that work group by that boss, that it's work until So we're going to use you up, Emily, and when you're just a little bit off your game, boom,
Yeah.
No, it's just awful. It's awful. And you mentioned in the chapter or about the scenario with Emily, a couple of management 101s. And I love that because you basically said, having those one-on-ones.
Mm-hmm.
Having one-on-ones is management 101, building
I
that
agree.
relationship, So I love the 101 concept because actually I designed a course at a place I was working, a state hospital, by the way. And I was the HR director at the facility, and employees would be coming to me and just telling me these stories, these awful stories about what their manager or their supervisor had said or done, or just awful. And my employee relations professional, we just go, this has got to stop. We just have to build some baseline 101 for anybody that's going to be a supervisor or better. And we designed it, and it was like, I got to have these people stop coming to me and telling me all these horror stories. We got to get out in front of it, but they didn't have necessarily 101 for any of their managers, and it was a state organization. So so empathy, you want to hit on empathy a little bit more? Like when you're talking about empathy at work from a manager, what does that break down to for you?
Well, I think that most people know what empathy is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, empathy is about putting yourself in the shoes of the other. It's about really trying to understand what they are going through, what they're living through, as opposed to just, hearing it and kind of going, It's about really kind of digging in and understanding it.
Yes.
Not just understanding the what, but understanding how it impacts everything. So how will it impact your report that is telling you this? What is the effect on his or her life? What are they experiencing? And then understanding what is the impact on the work, on the team, on you as the manager. And then using that understanding to create a strategy. So if you can empathize, if you can have that sort of relationship where you are speaking with them one-on-one, where you truly dig to what is happening, what it's going to take to work through this, then you as a manager can develop that strategy. So as you know, I try to look at these things with two lenses. I look at it from the people lens, but also from the business lens.
Mm-hmm.
And empathy is a really key trait for managers to have, both personally for the people they work with, to develop those relationships where people want to do their best work, where they feel inspired and engaged, where they're loyal to their boss and to their teams, and where they're there to do their best. And empathy is also super important for the company aspect, because you get it. You get what the ramifications are.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then you can make the best business decisions to deal with those ramifications. Okay. Now, of course, as a business person, you also have to understand the other things that are involved. Like, what does it mean if you, in Emily's case, if she goes on leave for a month, what does that mean in terms of HR? What do you have to get into place that way? Does it mean you have to hire a temp to take her job? Or does this mean that other people in your team pick up the slack until she's back? What does this all look like? But from a business perspective, you can make those decisions much better if you well and truly have a deep appreciation for what is happening here. And to balance that out, if you have a truly empathic kind of understanding of this, then you can have those real conversations with people like Emily, where you can say, okay, really, don't give me the beauty queen response here. Really tell me, how long is this going to take? Yeah. What can you do versus what you can't do? But more to the point, if you understand how much they truly want to contribute to their work, then you will also, from a business side, know how important it is to stay in touch with them, to make sure that they're part of communication for the team, to make sure that they're always feeling like they are wanted.
Yeah.
They're wanted. And we're seeing this now, Doug, with people who are all working remotely. And they're feeling removed from their teams, both physically and communication wise. They're feeling like they're on their own to deal with things.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have empathy for that as managers, then we will make it part of our strategy to reach out, to connect, to make sure that we're sharing with them, to make sure that the team is sharing with each other, to keep them in the loop.
Find a way.
Go ahead.
You know what I loved? I just wanted to point out something. You didn't say it in the chapter or the scenario with Emily, but there's something that jumped out at me that her boss, her second boss, again, this is the corporate shuffle, that Emily hired on with a different boss, got moved. But there's this management trope that I've heard my whole life, is that a tough guy manager, or a hamburger manager, I like to call it, or just an incompetent manager, they love to say, don't come to me with problems unless you come with 3 or 4 solutions. Don't come to me with problems. Okay, you know what that says to me? It says to me straight up, I don't want to hear real issues from you. Yeah. And in fact, most people won't go to their boss unless they really are stuck, with the problem. And so managers are waving, they don't want to do their job at times to listen to somebody's concern that works for them. And they really see it as a problem. Yep. And maybe maybe they've thought it through, but they've come to you because they're at the end and they really need your help. So I hate that. I hate that. Don't come to me with your problems unless you have 3 or 4 solutions. It's like, what nonsense is that? Anyway, I picked these things up over the years, these management tropes that
I love it.
And people learn them. People learn that from their manager. So they start saying it.
Yes, absolutely. I love that you brought that up. Thank you, because I believe that ties in so well with this. Yeah. Here's a situation where you are actually thinking that you are progressing the course of business, but what you're doing is halting the course of business. Because what you are doing with this, and using that, again, that sort of command and control approach, is you are saying, I don't want to hear it.
Right.
There's a problem. To me, that makes no sense. That, none whatsoever. Not even from a business perspective, right? Forget the personal. Let's leave that aside for a moment. Let's leave the people out. Let's focus on the business only. If you don't want to hear about it, then what happens? You don't know it exists until it's too late, until things are well and truly broken. Yeah. And that's a lot harder to fix. Yeah. If you know about these problems along the way, you can take steps to fix them. Okay. You can halt it before it becomes, you can get it back on the rails before it becomes a disaster. Okay. Now, the other thing, the message that people hear when you're as the manager saying, I don't want to hear your problems without a couple of solutions. Mm-hmm. You think what you're emphasizing is go out there, be creative, figure out some solutions. Okay. And then let's dig in together and work them. But what they're hearing is, don't talk to me. Mm-hmm. I don't want to know. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is they're either afraid and they scramble and maybe don't come up with the best solution, or they quit trying.
You used a term in the book that I went, okay, that is, you put it succinctly. Suck it up and deal.
Suck it up and deal.
You said that a couple times when I was reading the book, and it's like that's that mentality of no empathy, no caring about it. It's like a football coach, sort of like play with pain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Play with your pain, and we'll get through it. But we need you out there and all that, and definitely no concern for the long-term implications of pushing somebody back out on the field. But suck it up and deal is a nasty thing to say. but you know what? You put it in the book because that's sort of the attitude.
Well, we see this all the time. Mm-hmm. Now, think about cold and flu season,
Right.
Think about that. Just think about that. Every company, everywhere. I mean, well, maybe not every company, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
The lion's share of the companies say things like, if you are feeling sick, stay home. Take some time off to rest, recuperate. The reasoning is, firstly, you will get better faster.
Right.
But secondly, you won't spread it to everybody else.
Big
Okay.
time.
So companies everywhere have these policies. However, the way of handling this internally is very, very different. And I actually put an example of that in my book where I lived it myself. I was training for a very large international event. I was training a whole bunch of people. We had a hard stop. There was a deadline there. But we were also doing this during cold and flu season, and I got slammed by the flu. So slammed that I was in bed, like just, the kind where you're like that sort of thing. And I was supposed to be training that evening, 300 people. So what happened is, as I was sleeping, I left several messages for my boss on her cell phone, and I left a message on her desk phone. And later in the day, I got a phone call from a coworker who said, heads up, our boss is really upset with you. And so this is the same boss that couple of weeks earlier had told us, our policy is if you catch the flu, please stay home. Phone us and let us know. We'll figure it out, but please stay home, take care of yourself, rest, get better.
Yeah.
That's what was said. But when the rubber hit the road, I was in trouble for not showing up. The message was loud and clear to me and to everybody else that I worked with. And that message was, if you are sick, you haul your butt in here and you suck it up and deal.
Suck it up and deal.
So really interesting how what is said is not lived.
Yeah.
And I think we see examples of that all the time.
Oh, yeah. And many different, you're right. It's talking the talk, really. Talking the talk. Talking the talk is fun.
Yeah. Where's the empathy there?
Yeah.
Where is the empathy? You've got somebody who's literally sick in bed, and most of us have felt that way at some point in our lives. So we should be able to put ourselves in the shoes of that person. We should be able to know what it means to drag themselves out of bed onto public transit or driving in their car. I don't know which is worse when you're that sick, and then dragging themselves into the office and having to work through a day.
And expose 300 people, by the way. Thank you very much. And
expose 300 people. So we need to, from a business perspective, we need to understand that these policies are in place for a reason. And then we need to communicate that we are supportive of that decision to the managers. And then the managers need to be able to communicate that to their reports. Okay. In the case of Emily, in the case of this empathy, again, if I take it back to having that sort of understanding from the manager's perspective, but also from the company perspective, Emily would not have quit. She would have taken a month off to heal.
Right.
She would have come back, and maybe she wouldn't have been at 100%, but she would have been back to contributing for the company. And again, if we put this into cold hard dollars, they lost the time that she was off. They lost a contributing team member, and they're having to recoup the cost to replace her.
Right.
Okay.
I loved, this is what, here's a couple of other points from this scenario. Managers need compassion towards suffering. That's in your book. Mm-hmm. And you go, oh, how soft is that? But you know what? It's human beings come to your job. Human beings are in your workplace. You're a human being as a manager. And everything that we should be about when we're away from work needs to be happening in work because we're human. this thing of compassion in the workplace, because you're compassion. We should be compassionate for each other because we're fellow humans wherever we are, under the company's roof, or out on the street, or in our own homes. It's not like, so companies just got to start factoring in humanity, and the real importance of good relations between people. So, and here's the other thing: managers should encourage caring in their team. That's another thing you put. Yes. And what I took away here is they were taking their cues from the manager's inability to have empathy, and they were turning on, he or she got them turning on Emily. They turned on Emily, and that manager should have been approaching the situation with Emily. He or she was probably talking about it too, letting their thoughts about Emily spread. So the employees, they want to be good employees, so they're going to parrot what the manager says and get on their side. So it's really some sick shit going on. Sorry.
I don't think we realize, as leaders, as managers, I'm certain that this manager in question, I'm certain that they didn't set out to say, I'm going to be a jerk, and I'm going to make sure my team all behave just like me as a jerk. I'm certain of that. However, that's what happens. And so really, that's what this book is all about, is recognizing this bad behavior, understanding the impact, having some empathy, not just for the employee, but also for the manager in this example story.
So here's
saying here, let's work it out.
Here's what I wrote in here, and I don't think it can be read, but it says, bad managers, end quote, call it out, say it. Yeah. I love that Laura Sukorokoff says there are bad managers. We need to get better. Because there are bad managers, and we're not all bad, but we need help. No. we need training. We need we need training. We need education. We need to. And next chapter we're going to talk about like self-awareness. So I think we need to wrap up. But you want to hold up the book again, the cover?
Absolutely, absolutely happy to do that.
And name it out for us again.
It's called "It's Not Them, It's You: Why Employees Break Up with Their Managers and What to Do About It." And I just wanted to mention also that in the book, the first conversation you and I had was all about relationship building and all about that one-on-one conversation. And we touched on that at the beginning of this. I do want to point out that when you have a one-on-one conversation, when you develop a bit more of a personal relationship with somebody, it's really hard for you to not care about them at all. Okay. It's because you know them. This isn't about liking them completely. It's about knowing them and understanding them. And therefore you have some level of care. So it's really important, if you want to be this sort of manager that does have this kind of empathy, that does have a care and concern for your employees, you have to start that out by understanding who they are. So have those one-on-one conversations and ask them questions. I've got these in the book. I can read a couple of things.
Fire away.
Out, what can I do to help you? If Emily had been asked that question, you can imagine she would have said, I need you to advocate for me on behalf or with the company. And I would love for you to support me when I go to HR to talk to them about this. Okay. That's just asking the question makes a huge impact. Another one is, what is one thing you wish I knew about you, but don't? And so just asking that question, you can imagine that might be a toughie to answer right at the beginning. But if you get a relationship built up with somebody, they may really appreciate that you asked that question. They may really, and in a time like this, where so many of us are feeling so much stress, so much a mental ill-being, not well-being, but ill-being. And we are feeling burnout and we're feeling all of these things. Can you imagine the impact that a question like, what can I do to help you? Or what can the company do to help you? I mean, that would just make your heart swell with this company. I believe it was in this chapter. I just want to say one more quick thing.
Sure.
I want to show some evidence of the positive side of what a great manager can do to positively impact. I had this manager he had a dog. Mm-hmm. And I had a dog. Mm-hmm. And so we had this dog understanding, right? He was a great manager. I really worked well for him, really loved our working relationship. My dog died.
Oh.
I had to take her to be put down at about 5:30 in the morning. It was very traumatic for me. It was very, very sad. And I phoned my boss at about 8 o'clock or 8:30. And believe me, I don't think there was any moisture left in my body. I had cried so much. I was exhausted physically, mentally, emotionally. I was drained. And I phoned him and I said, I can't work right now. I'm going to start late this morning. I promise you I'll work late into the evening. But right now, this is what happened and I can't deal. And what he said to me is, Laura, I understand. I know how much you love your dog. I know what this would feel like. And so I want you to take this day off. Just take it off, be with your family, grieve, and then let me know if you are feeling like you can work tomorrow.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Do you know that the loyalty points went shooting up through the roof? I just felt like this man understood. He truly understood me. And I wanted to do the best work I could for him and for the company that would hire somebody like him. So that's the flip side of empathy.
Yeah.
Right?
The flip side, that is empathy. Right?
Yeah. So if you're wondering where your win is, there it is.
Yeah. I went through a divorce and wouldn't wish it on anybody, but that's what happened. And my boss had that experience in his life. And, I guess there was a meeting we had one day and I told him what was happening and he just he didn't say much, but he just said, I know what you're going through. If I can help you in any way, it's hard. It's a hard path. And, that really, that went a long way for me that my boss would just because you're feeling bad about the whole thing anyway,
sure.
But he just kind of it's okay. And I even think he said, you're going to get through this, So.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, and let me know what I can do to help.
That's here it is again. It's not them, it's you.
Here's
Why
the
employees
version.
Break up with their managers and what to do about it by Laura Sukorokoff. We're going to put how to get to Laura on the show notes or the episode notes. Her website. You want to say your website again?
Sure. It's cchangelearning.com. That is letter C, then the words change and learning. cchangelearning.com.
All right. That's where you find Laura. And Laura, next time we're going to meet another character in your book. And who's it going to be? I don't want to put you on the spot.
It's going to be Simone.
Simone. Yes, Simone. So we're going to...
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
We're going to hear about Simone next time and talk about another good leadership trait that's needed. Thank you again, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks. I look forward to it.
Me too. Bye.
Bye.
And that's a wrap for this edition of the Defined Engagement BookCast. So we'll be meeting with Laura next time, and we're going to meet Simone, and Laura's going to help us learn about support. So if you'd like to hear more of my bookcasts, don't hesitate to go to anchor.fm/Doug-Fine. And if you'd like to visit my website, the Defined Performance Solutions website, it's at DougJFine.com. Thank you again for joining me, and we'll see you next time with Laura Sukorokoff and her book, It's Not Them, It's You. Bye-bye for now.